All right. I want to welcome everyone to Learn How to Sell Better. We have two fantastic SCORE mentors that are going to present on this topic today. And I think that they do an excellent job. So you're in for a good presentation. So I do want to say as we get started that this program is part of a series of presentations that we are running that we're calling Business Essentials series. These are the topics that we have run or are going to be running yet for this early summer, late spring. So if you haven't seen joined or haven't seen the other ones coming up, please take a look for those in the newsletter. If you've missed any of these topics and want to revisit those, you can find those on our website under the previously recorded, and I'll explain where to find those. We will run this series again, including number 10 and 11, which are missing right now, but those will run starting late summer, early fall. We'll start again from the first one in the series. So I do also want to explain to you a little bit about SCORE to make sure you're taking full advantage of everything that we have to offer. Our goal is to share small business information with you, and we do that in a couple different ways. SCORE.org website, great place to find podcasts, articles, recordings, templates that you could download, loaded with lots of great information. So take a look through there. We also share information through our workshops and webinars. We post those to social media. We also advertise those through our newsletter, and they are shown on our website as well. I think the most important thing that SCORE does, however, will be the mentoring. And our mentors are volunteers. They have a variety of skill sets and they have a variety of experiences that they've learned from so that they can share that information with you. We work with folks that are in all stages. You might be in the, should I start a small business, to in the planning phase, to being in business, growing your business, and getting ready to exit your business, whether through succession planning or selling your business, etc. We work with everyone on the whole entire journey. If you've never had a mentor, the first session, they're going to want to learn about you, what your goals and challenges are, and they're going to work with you to come up with a plan. It's also not uncommon that other mentors are brought in on the journey to make sure that you're getting everything that you need to be successful. So the next logical question, how do you get that mentor? So probably the easiest, go to the score.org website. There's actually multiple ways on the website, but let us do the matching for you. Just put in your zip code. A little form is going to pop up. We're going to want to, obviously know your contact information, but we'd like to know what your business is and how we can help you in the moment. And that will allow us to match the most appropriate mentor to your situation. All the chapters have great what we call CICs that know the mentors and can help match you to someone that can assist you. So, questions today, if you can put them in Q&A, it allows me to not lose track of them. They can get a little lost in chat sometimes. So if you have a question for our presenters, please put those into the Q&A and we'll ask those questions for you and at the appropriate time. We are recording. You can find them on the score.org/Boston website. From the graphic, you can see if you look under the local workshops on the blue bar, you'll find previously recorded. Give me 24 to 48 hours to post this one. We have to let it process and run it through IT to get it on the website. So give me a little bit of time to do that, but it'll be there for you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull this down. Allow Dick to get his slides up, and then we'll be ready to move forward. Great. I see your slides, Dick. Go ahead.
Great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dick Rossman. I'm here with my partner in crime, Beverly Gottleib. We are SCORE mentors in the Boston chapter, and happy to present this webinar today, how small business owners like you can sell better and sell more. To get started, Beverly, why don't you tell the group a little bit about your background, and then I'll do the same, and then we'll get going.
Okay, thank you, Dick. I attended both Babson and University of Pennsylvania Wharton School, and I was an accountant, became certified, literally took 2 weeks off and started a company My company did insurance planning for the high tech and biotech industry. I was 25 years old. It was primarily a sales organization. And 25 years later, I sold it to a publicly traded company out of Florida and retired and started helping at SCORE. And it's about 9 years that I've been working as a
Great. Thanks, Beverly. My background's a good bit different. I started in the commercial printing industry and in a very successful family business in the greater Boston area, where I was VP of Sales and Marketing for 20 plus years. I then joined a software startup that had a little bit more of an international perspective, again, as VP of Sales and Marketing. That company disappeared in the dot-com era, and I wound my way back into the printing industry for 8 or so more years with a different company. Then became a sales coach and a sales trainer, a sales consultant, working with individuals, salespeople, and sales teams in order to help them sell better. And I retired and became, about 8 years or so, and became a SCORE counselor, and I've been such ever since. And so let's get started. First, we'd like to learn a little bit about who's in our audience. So if you could put 2 or 3 words in the chat about what's the product or service that your company sells. Nothing lengthy, just a couple words about what it is that your company sell. Teresa, if you could read some of them out when they come in, please.
Yes, of course. Yep. Commission, pet and children portraits, travel agency, life insurance, smartphone, camera, coach, recruiting services, financial literacy, life coaching, dance classes, manufacturing, machine parts. I think, Dick, we've got like everybody, every
Yep.
possible. Yeah, life and health insurance, accounting services,
Well,
auto sales. Yeah.
thanks, Teresa. Just as I expected, we've got it's amazing what small businesses there are out there and what they sell and what they manufacture, and so we've got a wide cross section today. That's great. Um, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, um, let's make sure we understand the difference between sales and marketing. Um, Marketing is all the actions that you take to make people aware of your product or your service. So any advertising you do, all of your social media, your branding, your blogs, any webinars that you give, any speaking engagements, direct mail, podcasts, you go to a trade show, that's all marketing. Those are all marketing tools, techniques, strategies, and they're all great. Because all of those will set the stage for a sale. But it's sales that gets the order. It's sales that puts the bucks in your pocket, and that's what we're focusing on today. But selling, doesn't come naturally to everyone, and which is fine. I work with a number of engineering types and financial types, and they're great at what they do. But selling and sales and sometimes marketing, it's not their natural activity, and so, but however, many of you, I'm going to guess, are what we call solopreneurs. You're the owner, you're the only person in your company, but at least you're the owner of your business, and that means automatically that you're in sales. And one of the many hats that you wear is your sales hat. But one of the problems that we all have in sales is the unfortunate perception that many people have about salespeople. When I say salesperson, what's a word or two? Put a word or two in the chat about what you think of, first thoughts, when I say salesperson.
Okay. We've got,
Yeah.
pushy, a dupe, used car salesman, goal getter, annoying, salesy person.
So there you go. It's unfortunate, this perception, but it can be true because and it exists because most people in sales don't respect what they're doing and don't treat their customer, their prospect properly. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. Because selling is a very important and positive role, and it's really necessary. And so, if done right, you can be extremely successful at it. And so that's part of what we're going to talk about today, because there's a process that is done properly is very successful, and it may take a little practice to be comfortable with that process. But the process is going to benefit you, the seller, and the buyer, because you have a valuable service or a product to offer. And it's important that you recognize that and think of yourself in that regard. Many people are uncomfortable thinking of themselves as a salesperson. That's fine. And for those folks, I say, fine. Think of yourself as a problem solver, because that's really what a salesperson does. They're able to identify a problem that their customer has, and they're able to offer solutions to that problem. And again, done right, you provide a great benefit to your customer, and you get paid for it. What's wrong with that? But we in sales need to recognize that you're not going to be successful all the time. So you need to learn how to handle rejection and being told, so no, not ready, not interested. And that maybe they're not interested now. That doesn't mean they're not going to be interested in the future. And you need to take that into account. We'll talk a little bit more about that too. Because people want to buy, but no one wants to be sold to. So they want or need to buy from you because they have a problem that you can solve. So keep that in mind. You're going to hear me say that a lot today. And in order to be successful as a salesperson, you need to be confident in two different ways. You've got to believe in the benefits that your product or your service can bring to your customer. You need to be convinced that you can solve your customers' problems. And you also have to have the right attitude. You need to believe that you're going to get the order. I mean, it's hard to win if you go into hard to close a sale, complete a sale, if you go into the conversation or the opportunity thinking, oh, this person's not looking, I don't think this is going to happen today. You start that way, and that's going to be what's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you need to be confident, and you need to get out of what I call head trash out of your head. Head trash is what goes on in our mind that has no basis in reality, no proof, no fact, that occurs in your mind that prevents you from being successful. Give you an example. Let's say you're in a networking event. There's 20 people in the room. Everyone's there for the same purpose. They're all there to meet everyone else, to maybe uncover a new prospect and have a meeting going forward. And you look across the room, and there's someone who's sort of looking at you out of the corner of their eye, and they've got their arms folded, arms crossed in front of them, and your head trash kicks in, and you think, oh, that person's looking at me strange. I'm not even going to bother to reach out and introduce myself to that person. Well, you have no idea what's going on with that person. Maybe that's how they always look. You don't know. And that person maybe could have been a good customer for you, but your head trash is preventing you from acting. So keep that in mind and get that out of your head, and focus on what you know, what's specific and what's true and factual. But you also need to know that you're not going to turn every prospect into a customer at that time, and that's okay. But your job, if you think they are a good prospect, is to continue to stay in touch with them. Show that you're intelligent, you're educated, you know what you're doing, you're a professional going forward by what you send them or how you stay in touch with them. And when their problem is big enough and they're ready to spend some resources, invest their time or their money to solve that problem, you want to make sure that they think of you to come and help them there. What's also important is that you're able to separate your identity from your role. What do I mean by that? Well, your identity is who you are, who you think of yourself as a person. you're a great guy, you're a great woman, you're a good father, a good husband, a good wife, whatever it may be. But you think of yourself positively, and maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, you're always an 8 or a 9 or a 10 in your identity. But we also have many roles. Today we're talking about our role as a salesperson. And maybe yesterday in that role, you made 20 phone calls and no one picked up the phone. Or a good customer had to cancel an order. Just nothing that you could have done about it, something on their end, and they had to cancel an order. Or you went to a networking event, it was the wrong event. The people in the room weren't the right people for you. So at the end of the day, you rank yourself as in your role as a salesperson as a 5. But you need to keep in mind that your identity, you're still a great person. You still think of yourself as in that identity role as a 9 or a 10. And you want to be thinking about what went wrong today so that the next day you can make your think of yourself in your salesperson role as an 8 or a 9. What do you have to do better to get there? What's really important is being able to identify who your customer is. And so when I meet with a new SCORE client, that's one of the first questions I ask them. And many times they'll say, "Oh, anyone, I can sell my product or my service. Everyone can use what I sell or what I make." And I say, well, theoretically that may be true, but you can't sell to everyone. So you got to define more specifically who your target customer is. And you can do that with geography. Let's say you really want to in your sales efforts, you want to have a face-to-face meeting. So maybe you want to meet with folks in New England because that's as far as you want to travel. Or you only, women are your target, or women between 20 and 40 are your target, whatever it may be. Because you want to narrow down that target, your target customer, so you can market to them. You can't market to the world, so you want to be able to focus your marketing and so create that target market and find that niche. You could have more than one niche, but make sure it's a narrow niche, because your goal here is to become a big fish in a little pond. You want to become the expert in what you do. You want to be known as the go-to person in your field, because you become known as the person with the solution who can solve your customers' problems. And again, you can be in more than one pond, but you want to make sure you're the expert and you market to that pond. Let me give you an example. I've got a SCORE client who's in the commercial construction business. He builds small strip malls. He does a lot of additions to offices, things like that. And his business was okay, but it wasn't great, and it was fairly competitive. And about a year or so ago, he had 2 different projects for him. He won a bid to build a veterinary office, an office for a vet. And he learned that there were a lot of sort of specialties and techniques that and different plumbing, different electrical, et cetera, for a vet's lab, diagnostic facilities, et cetera. And then he also got a job building out a new dental practice, which had different but similar specific techniques and plumbing, electrical, and build out that he needed to learn. And both projects were very successful. And he started to get inquiries from other vets and other dentists about doing that, about doing work for them. And so he became the commercial building expert in those 2 fields in his region. And he met lenders. He met the bankers who focused on loaning to vets, loaning to dentists. He met architects who specialized in designing offices for dentists, office for vets. And he started to network. He changed his website messaging. He started to go to trade shows for those 2 professions. Anyway, his business grew significantly by becoming the expert in those 2 ponds. And it changed his entire business around. So focus on that. And it doesn't take much. In this case, he had one job that he did well in each of those two ponds, and he was able to turn that into becoming known as the expert in those areas. It doesn't take much to gain some credibility, and say you understand that your client's business and know what to do there. Many times when I meet with a salesperson, and have a conversation with them, and I ask them what they sell, they start talking to me about all the wonderful features that they offer, their product offers, what they sell, and they talk features, and what they talk about what they bring to their customers' table, and I say, whoa, turn yourself around 180 degrees, because this isn't about you. That's not what your value is. Your value is, think of this from your customer's point of view, your prospect's point of view. What are the problems that you can solve for them? And talk about and think of those in terms of your benefits, because that's where you want to be focusing. And you also want to understand, why are you different? What sets you apart? What distinguishes you? You specifically are as important. Your attitude, your experience, your knowledge, how you present yourself to your customers, that's as important as what it is that you sell. So that's part of your value, because that's what we're creating here. You want to be selling your value, not your features, and understanding how you can uniquely solve your customers' problems. What's special about you? And being able to answer the question, why should your customer buy from you? And with those answers, that's where you want to be focusing your messaging. You want to direct your website to talk about these problems that you can solve, and why you are unique in some fashion. Your elevator pitch, the content of your webinars, et cetera, all wants to be focusing on the problems that you can solve. But when you're meeting with a prospect, it's unlikely, it's unrealistic to think that they're going to tell you what their true problems are. They don't know you, they don't trust you yet, and so they're going to talk about their surface problems. But it's your job to find out what their real problem is, and the way to do that is by asking questions, by asking the right questions, because you want to keep asking until you get an emotional response. What do I mean by that? There's an acronym called FUDWACA. You can see here, it stands for fear, uncertainty, doubt, worry, anger, concern, anxiety. When you hear those words from your prospect, you know that you've uncovered what their real problem is, because people buy to solve an emotional problem. Let me give you an example. Let's say you sell, your company, you sell human resource benefits to small business owners. You sell life insurance, disability insurance, healthcare benefits, anti-smoking, weight loss, all the benefits that a small business owner may offer to his employees. So you're at a networking event, and you meet a woman who, you ask her what she does, and she says, yeah, I own a small business. And you tell her what you do, and she says, I'm thinking of adding a few benefits to what I offer to my employees. I don't think that they're quite adequate. Well, what's the typical salesperson going to do when they hear that? Maybe not physically, but at least mentally, they're going to start to jump up and down. I've got a live one here. I've got one here. This is what I do. I got a sale. Well, hold on. Because you folks who are listening, you aren't the typical salesperson. You're not going to do that, are you? What you're going to do is ask some questions, because you don't know what the real problem is yet. You've just understood a surface situation. So you want to ask what we call pain funnel questions. Oh, really? That's interesting. Can you tell me a little more about that? Maybe be a little more specific. And note the tone, the empathy. Empathy is very important here in asking these questions. Really, how long has that been a problem? How long, how long have you been concerned about this? Been thinking about this? Have you tried to solve the problem yet? What have you done? Did that work? If you don't solve the problem, what do you think is going to happen? Well, you ask those questions. Um, what you may hear from this woman is, I in the last 6 months, I've lost two key employees. They've left my company because the benefits that I'm offering just aren't as good as my competition, and they had specific reasons why they needed to have be covered in other areas that I just wasn't offering, and they left. And I'm really afraid, I'm really concerned that if another one of my key employees leaves, my company's going to be in serious trouble. Hiring new people, especially in my field, is really hard nowadays. Whoa. So what has she just told you? She's used the worry, she's used concern. Now you know that you've uncovered what her real problem is. And you can say, honestly, I'm presuming, I've worked with folks who, like you, who've been in exactly that same situation. I don't know if I can help you, but maybe it would make sense to get a cup of coffee and tell me a little bit more, and let me tell you a little bit about how I solve my other customers' problems, and maybe I've got a solution for you. I don't know. What do you think's going to happen after you say something like that, and based on what she's told you? You think she's going to say, "Oh no, sorry, not interested"? I don't think so. I think she's going to say, "Geez, that would be great. When do you think we could meet?" Um, And that's your goal. Your goal in that situation, it was a networking situation. Your goal is to get a meeting, and that's how it can be done. Let's talk a little bit about price, because many people think that if their price is lower than their competition, that they're going to sell more. And I'm going to say to that, baloney. You don't have to have the lowest price, because low price doesn't necessarily equal best value. And that's what you're selling. You're selling value, your value, which is your expertise, your interest, your selling process, plus what you offer, what your product, your service, how that can be a solution to your customer, your prospect's problems. Because if you properly establish the value and your customer understands that you realize that you understand their problems, you've dealt with them before, you know what you're doing, you understand their business, then price becomes much less important in making their purchase decision, because there's less risk. You've explained to them how you are a less risky option, maybe more expensive, but risk can be much more important, or eliminating risk in making a decision can be much more important than the price, assuming that we're in a range. So when your prospect complains that your price is too high, sorry, Dick, I couldn't give you that contract. Your price was just too high. I'm going to suggest maybe you haven't done a good enough job in explaining your value. You haven't had that ask those pain funnel questions. You haven't uncovered what the real problem is. And it's easy for that person to tell you, because there's no way for you to prove it, sorry, your price is too high. It's easy. That's an easy put off for them to say, and they're not going to say it. People aren't going to tell you, for the most part. You just didn't convince me that you're as valuable as the next guy, or more valuable than the other person that I've been talking to. They don't want to say that, but what they will say is, sorry, you were too expensive. But keep in mind that can be a put off, and proving your value maybe wasn't what you did properly. Speaking of competition, it's really important that you know who else sells a similar product, a similar service that your prospects, your customers are buying. And you understand what sets you apart from them, how you are different from them, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are your strengths, et cetera. So that you're prepared. And so you want to learn this in advance, obviously. And you also want to assume that your competitors are smart and they're capable, and you never want to criticize them. I learned that the hard way when I was a rookie salesman in the printing business. And I was having a conversation with a good customer. We were competing on a job with a XYZ company, and they won the job. And so I said, "Gee, I'm a little surprised you gave them the job. I understand they're going through some tough times at the moment, and I don't think that their business is quite up to snuff." Well, after saying that, I never heard from my customer for about a month, and he sort of ghosted me. And I finally got back in touch with him, and I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Well, remember that job we talked about a number of weeks ago? I didn't appreciate your comment about XYZ. I value them as a supplier. They do a good job for me. And when you criticize them, you were basically criticizing my decision-making process. And I didn't appreciate that." Well, I apologize profusely, and you can make sure I never did that again. So what is important regarding your competition is that you understand the arguments that they will use about you, and you want to be proactive and try to comment on them in advance. Know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses may be, and minimize them, because your customer may not be buying from you all the time. Maybe the problem that you can solve for them isn't quite big enough at the moment, but when it is big enough, you want to make sure that they think of you and not your competition as that solution. We talked at the beginning of the webinar about the hats you wear, and saying that you are your company salesperson, and that's really an important hat that your company that you are wearing. And it's important that you take it seriously, your selling role very seriously, and that you set aside time for selling. You can't wing it and be successful. So I'm suggesting that maybe you block out in your calendar every Monday from 8 to 11. I don't know, whatever works for you as your selling time. Don't override it. Don't lose it. Maintain that schedule and use that time. And maybe you want to follow up on past customers. Maybe you want to make some cold phone calls, and Beverly's going to talk to you about cold calling in a minute. Maybe you want to check back with some of your existing customers and see how things are going. What's new? Is there some way that you can help them? Whatever it may be, set aside that time for your selling techniques, your selling activities, and stick to it. And you also always want to be having some goals going on, and being able to hold yourself accountable. And these goals that you set, that you work on, and they may be a goal for the day, for the week, the month, the year. They want to be SMART goals, what we call SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to talk a little bit more about holding yourself accountable, setting some SMART goals, and how you can achieve those goals. So right now, Beverly's going to pick up the conversation, and then I'll come back to you. Beverly?
Thank you, Dick. So I want to start with my mantra, which is successful people do what others aren't willing to do. And you're going to see that throughout the rest of the presentation. Sometimes it's making those phone calls, which people find hard to do. Other times it's, well, I'll tell you later, but it's difficult to get yourself motivated to do things or work the long hours, but successful people do what others aren't willing to do. Dick had touched on the fact that you need to define as precisely as you can your customer. It will help you figure out how to find them, where to find them, and what to say to them. You want to know their problems. And when I say know their problems, not only the problems that you are going to solve, but the problems they have in their industry. It will help you create rapport. People will realize that you know them, not just one other person that you're selling to. You really can feel what they go through in their given day. And by knowing them as best you can find out what trade shows they go to, what websites they go to, what chat rooms they go to, what periodicals they look at. You want to really find out, where do they get their information when they're going to make a decision. And as Dick said, you can have multiple client segments. That's what I call them. A prime example is, I had a locksmith, and on the weeknights, like Thursday, Friday, etc., the BU students and BC students would lose their keys and get locked out of their house. And what they would do is they would call him, and that would be his cash flow. But the real people that he wanted to get involved with were property managers, where there would be a building with multiple locks. So this is an extreme example of marketing to two different types of people. So once you define your customer, you have to define how you are going to reach them. The other thing is, think outside the box. Just because you are going to a segment that is unaddressed doesn't mean that it's not going to be profitable. When I started, I worked with the startups, and people said, why would you work with the startups? They're small, they have no money. Well, that was very short-sighted, because startups grow. And as a result, when they got VC funded and grew from 10 people to 250, 300 people, when they were plum clients, they could not dislodge me because I had done such a good job along the way. So as long as an unaddressed segment can be profitable, it's worth taking a very strong look at that. Next slide. How do you find them? A very important question. Today, it's easier than long ago when I started, because you can go through your Facebook friends, you can go through your Instagram followers, you can go through your phone contacts. Make a list and divide it into 3 segments. Who can buy now? Who can buy later? And most importantly, who can give me referrals? Now, there is really an art to asking for a referral. When you, first of all, getting a referral is important. You can't just say to somebody, hey, who do you know who does this? People are going to look at you with a blank stare. Sometimes what people do is they go through a LinkedIn and see who they're related to. That way you can, quote, prime the pump and say, hi, I'm interested in this type of a person. You really want to define your customer for the person giving you the referral. And then you say, I saw on your LinkedIn that you know this person and this person and this person. Are those people that you might be able to refer me to? And you should be asking family, friends, clients, vendors, even people who don't buy from you for referrals. One of the best ways, who was in the industry, and he would say, if they didn't buy from me, I would say, I get paid in 2 ways. Obviously, if you buy from me, but also through referrals. And that would encourage people who weren't able to buy, because they may not have been able to buy from you because they didn't have the budget, even though they loved you, they loved your product, everything you did was right. Or it turns out in the last moment, they find that the president of the company's brother-in-law is in the business and they have to buy from him. They actually want to help you. They feel like they owe something to you. The way you ask for referrals, again, is very important. People are afraid, oh, well, she's going to call them and never let them go and bother them and be pushy. What I would do is I would say, I'm merely looking for introductions. I don't know if they have a problem I can solve. You don't know if they have a problem. What I'd like to do is introduce myself and my services to them. And should they have a problem that I can solve, great. But if not, perhaps they'll have one down the road and they'll think of me. All I want to do is an introduction so they can think of me. It's a much softer way of trying to get a referral. Referrals are wonderful. They are not predictable, so you always have to be prospecting. Even if you are completely busy and booked up and have more orders than you could possibly handle, keep prospecting. All you have to do is set people's time frames, but always keep prospecting. I've had people who've had contracts. They're like engineers with contracts. They're so busy doing the contracts, they're not prospecting. The contracts terminate, and now they have no future contract. Networking and meeting at conferences are very important right now, especially. And if you do go to a conference with somebody else from your company, do not sit with them. If you're, for example, at a lunch and 3 of you are from your company and it's a table of 10, you're going to meet 7 people. If each of you sat at a different table, you would meet 27 people. You want to talk to, if you're sitting in a seminar, you want to talk to the person on your left, on your right, in front of you, behind you. You want to talk to as many people as you can. And if you go to a conference and there's a breakfast, be the first one at the breakfast. Potentially sit down with the first group of people, and then if there's still time, grab a cup of coffee and go to a different table. If there is a happy hour, or instead of just going back to your room between the seminar and dinner, go to the bar, even if you don't drink. Just get a soda water, network with the people you see at the bar. So the more you can see people, the better it is. Building your sphere of influence is very important. That is having somebody else feed your pipeline. Dick had mentioned it because as the construction guy met the architects and the bankers, they're able to recommend him. For example, I had an HR consultant who went to a new company, 4 new companies every year, and she would bring me in for the benefits. And the next year she would move on, but of course they stayed with me because I did a great job. And I knew I would get another 4 clients from her as she went to 4 new companies the following year. A wedding planner will help out the florist, will help out the caterer, make many recommendations, even of venues. The other thing is to find people in like industries. You're selling to the same people. So it's not somebody who's outside filling your pipeline. It would be the florist talking to the caterer. It would be, I had somebody who did high-end musical instruments. They networked with people who did high-end amps. You're both selling to the same type of people, and you should be sharing your leads. Think outside the box. Just like I said, try and find maybe the segments people aren't going for, the clients people aren't going for, but there's a lot of them and it's marketable. I would want to meet these startups, and the best place to meet them was at the venture capital Christmas party. I would do anything I could to get to the venture capital Christmas party. And I would go up to an entire room of startups and ask what they did and tell them what I did, but they're there for a shrimp and a drink. So I would say, wow, do you mind if I call you on Monday? I'd love to talk to you more about this. And that's what I would do. I would call them on Monday. So they were expecting my call, and I didn't take up their time, but I got a great lead. Next slide. Inbound marketing. Some people think if they put up a website, there it is. Everyone's going to come to them. Things don't quite work that way. Facebook is a great place to sell visual products. LinkedIn is great for priming the pump and for networking. Instagram is great for visual products. It's wonderful if you can be noticed by an influencer. Anything you can do to have people notice you. Blogging, videos, people will share videos. Sometimes your best market is reached by a video or a blog. It will also help you with your SEO, which is search engine optimization. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. Cold calling, which I loved. Sometimes people think of cold calling as, gee, I just can't pick up the phone. It's actually okay to send the email, do a call, send the email, do a call. So if it feels more comfortable that way, that is just fine. But the call is extremely important. That personal touch where you can actually hear their problems. When you send an email, you are not able to develop the rapport to find out what their true problems are. Email campaigns. I know we keep harping on finding your customer, defining it. Think about it. You don't define your customer as well as you could, and you get 500 leads and you're very excited. But embedded in those leads are 100 people who are really your target market. Out of those 100, you get 10 appointments and you sell 3. If you had better defined your customer, you would have just gotten that 100, gotten that 10, gotten that 3. Since you didn't, you're going to make 400 extra phone calls, one that costs you more money, a lot more time, and a lot more no's. So what you want to do is use your email campaigns effectively. And again, think outside the box. One of our clients, they started a dental practice near Crown Colony, which is in Quincy. And it's very easy for people to see a dentist on their lunch hour, just take an hour off from work. And so he wanted people in all the office buildings in that local area. So he would send these huge flower baskets with his dental information, or fruit baskets occasionally with these dental information. And that's how he raised his practice. Next slide. So there's really, as you know, 2 sides to a results page when you're Googling. One is the paid ads at the top, and those are done through a bidding function. And it can be very expensive because every time they click on that function, whether they convert into a client, you are charged. As a small business, generally it's better to invest your dollars in SEO, which is search engine optimization. From a marketing standpoint, that is a great place to spend. You want to find, you can do stuff yourself by adding AdWords. We have entire webinars on how to maximize your showing up on the first page or showing up at all. And doing things to help yourself, such as blogging and videos and various other things. There are algorithms in the background that an SEO expert can help you with that will bring you to a more visible state. And also, you can find depending on your industry, certain recommendation lists. You know, people will Google window washers and there will come up a recommended list of window washers, or artists, and they are part of an organization that you can join into. And again, it helps not only with SEO, but it helps with you getting visibility. I mean, think of Angie's List, a perfect example of something that's been curated so that people can easily find you and get your business that way. Next slide. Direct mail. A lot of people think, of course, that it's archaic, but I can tell you, going back to the window washer, because it's spring, it would be nice if somebody had mailed me a card in January, February, March, April, even now, that would say window washing, and I would be reminded, I would have saved it, and I would call them now. So certain industries can profit from direct mail. Trade shows. Trade shows are wonderful, again, for certain industries. You want to talk to not only the attendees, and you want to be upfront. You don't want to be sitting in the back of your booth. You want to be upfront. You want to have a takeaway for somebody. You want a QR code in case they can't stop and talk to you for a period of time. You not only want to talk to the attendees, but you want to talk to the vendors that are there. Because remember, you're all selling to the same people. Maybe there's somebody that you can share your leads with. Speaking engagements and educational seminars. I think those are very important, great deal of visibility. If you are doing one, it's important that you can get the list of people who are attending that particular educational or speaking engagement. Also, I suggest that you make up a card. You can do it very inexpensively through Canva, and maybe have 4 or 5 things on the card that you talked about where people could get additional information, and they fill out their contact on the back. If people bring those up to you or you collect them at the end, it's a great way to get your hot leads from that group. And also, always try and stay after the session. People would like to come up to you and talk to you. Those, again, are people who are the most interested. If you see the line is long, then you can just ask people to hand out a card or a brochure and say, just send me a quick note and we can have a quick conversation. One of the things that you do want to be able to, when you're at a trade show or something, to extricate yourself is you can say, this is so interesting. I could talk to you for another hour, but I know there's probably more people that you and I need to talk with, or something of that sort. Do you mind if I call you on Monday and get their information? Another key thing is there are electronic software that you can actually quickly trade information with. I don't particularly have those names, but there are, so that you don't have to be handing out a card. You don't have to spend a lot of time inputting somebody's information into your phone. You can simply exchange it very quickly. Other festivals, open markets, there are, think outside the box. You might be having a booth at a running event, a 5K. It all depends on what your industry is, but you want to think, where do the people I want to meet gather? And that's where you want to be. Slide. Elevator pitch. Mine was, I do insurance planning and benefits planning for the high-tech and biotech industry. I work with the founders of the startups. In 2 seconds, you know exactly what I do. When I was working with a client, she was going to a networking event and we did her elevator speech. And afterwards I said, okay, say it to me. And she said, oh, I can't do that. And I said, well, if you can't tell it to me, and we've been working on this, how are you going to do it tonight? So she did it the first time and it was rough. And she did it the second time and it was better. She did it the third time, even better. And then I dropped a pencil and I said, now say it while picking up your pencil. Because the key is it has to be part of you. You want to be listening to other people, not thinking about what you need to say, if that makes sense. Yes, you need to think about what you need to say in response, but you need to have answers to questions. You need to have your elevator pitch. You need to know their problems so that you have the things that you want to say already in your heart and in your soul, so that you can actually listen and ask the probing questions that Dick talked about. You want to ask them, oh, do you have a current vendor? Tell me, have you had any problems that the vendor has solved? Have you had any problems with the vendor? You want to talk about as much as you can. If they say we've had no problems, say, has this happened to you? Have they talked to you about this? And then you want to develop solutions to their problems. You want to articulate how you can help them. It's not about you, it's all about them. And you always want to ask for the opportunity to follow up. I once actually stood up, put on my coat, and the client actually said, oh, do we need to sign some paperwork? And I had to sit down and sign the paperwork. Always try, when you're on the phone or you're leaving a meeting, try to get the follow-up meeting, because it's easier to change the meeting than to chase them to get the meeting. So you want to say, why don't we make this, decide how long it's going to take you if you're doing a proposal. Why don't we make this in 2 weeks? Let's just pick a date. And if for some reason something comes up, I'll call you at the beginning of the week to just make sure that, it's still a good time for you. Next slide. Telephone calling does work. Again, if you feel more comfortable, send the email and then follow up with the call. One or two no's does not mean it's a bad list or that you're saying the wrong thing. 1 or 200, yes, but not 1 or 2. You want to be positive and have a solid message. You want to know your message so that it's very easy for you to speak clearly, slowly, with intonation. You want to sound like you're having a conversation, not like you're trying to sell something. Tone, pace. You want every call to sound distinct and special. You want it to sound like that is the only call you're making that day. I used to get an appointment generally with my first call. Why? Because I was fresh and I was interested. If you look at this as, oh, I've got 10 calls I promised I'd make today, you might as well not make them. I used to say it was dialing for dollars. I had windows in my office, and in the pretty much the fall, the late fall, when we change the clocks at 4:30, it would be dark. And I would see my reflection back in the window as though it was a mirror. And I would be smiling as I made these calls. And I didn't even know I was smiling. But for me, this is an opportunity to make money. This is how you reach people. The best time to call may not be the best time for you. I used to sometimes call early in the morning because I could get past the administrative assistant. I would call late on a Friday. Who was working besides me? Another business owner. So successful people do what others aren't willing to do. And to get these phone numbers, just to let you know, the Secretary of State would produce a list and it had no phone numbers. So sometimes you have to dig for the phone numbers, but it's worth it. The Secretary of State would just have their addresses. I would stand in a payphone because they didn't charge you for information then. And I would get 400 numbers and then I would have them to call. So successful people do what others aren't willing to do. Put the time in. The goal is to get a meeting, not to sell your product. What you want to do is ask questions, don't sell. You want to build rapport. The longer you can keep them on the phone, the better the chances that you are going to get a meeting. Educate, do not sell. Did you know that? And then you can go into other problems that you've solved for other people. You really want to make them feel like they and their problems are important to you. If they do say no, that they can't do a meeting now, it doesn't mean that they're never going to do a meeting. Ask, is there a better time for me to call back? You don't know if they've just signed the renewal for their contract for a year of what you're selling. You don't know if they're going to be moving office space in 3 days. You don't know if the HR person is having a bad day. The person I was talking to might have been going through a divorce and they just got off the phone with the lawyer. You don't know what's going in the person you're talking to's life or in their business life. So this may not be the time of the year that you wouldn't want to call an accountant, for example, between January and April. But in the summertime, they might want to talk to you. So you always want to ask, is there a better time for me to get back to you? And be organized and have a client management software system. Many of them are free. Next slide. It's very important to establish rapport. Body language, it's kind of interesting. You can mirror if you think you're creating rapport. If you go like that or like this or put your hands out in front of you, if the person sitting across from you does the same thing unconsciously, you have created rapport. It was a little test I used to do. It was interesting. If somebody went to MIT and they had the brass rat on their finger, which is their signature ring, is the nickname for their signature ring. I knew I had a new client because I knew how to create rapport with that client. I knew how to make them feel. A lot of it is how you make people feel. They could trust me. I knew all the answers, and they knew once they did business with me, it was off their plate and they were not going to have to worry about it. I was going to handle everything. Questions and answers. It's the art of listening. As we keep talking about, you need to develop solutions. So you need to be listening to what their problems are. Don't assume you know their problems. And you want to ask, don't tell. I said I never sold anything. They bought. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that order. Also, it's the 80-20 rule. They should actually be talking 80% of the time, and you just 20% of the time, answering the questions after they've told you everything you need to know. And you have to know that there is a problem. If there's no problem, there's no sale. One of my best lines also is, though most people meet only with me, have you spoken to anybody else? Like I said, you don't want to call in competition, but you want to know if there is competition. And then you can do a research on their type of product or what they're going to be looking at besides as an alternative. So, though most people only meet with me, have you talked with anybody else? Next slide. It's really important that you talk to the decision maker. If you're selling a software product and you're talking to an engineer, you need to talk to the person who's actually making the decision. It may be the VP of engineering, it may be the CFO. One of the reasons is you know your product so well and you can communicate it so well. But the minute you leave the room, the person you've spoken to probably forgot about 50%. And 3 days later, when they meet with their boss, they've probably forgot another 30%. The other problem is that what you're solving for one person may not be the same problem you'd be solving for the decision maker. The engineer might look at and say, wow, this would save me so much time. Whereas the CFO is going to go, well, we're already paying this guy, and unless we have something else for him to do, then it's not worthwhile to spend all this money just to make his job easier. So you definitely want to meet with the decision maker. The other problem is that you don't know the budget. That can influence how you put together your proposal. Do you show it as a big package? Do you show it as a 3-year package? Do you show it as a base with add-ons? So it's important, and it's hard to ask that question sometimes. Do you have a budget for this? What did you think you could assign to this? What have you paid in the past for this? So it's all trying to get an understanding so that you can create an appropriate type of proposal. One of my other favorite lines is, what needs to occur for you to move forward? Not only does that sometimes give you a date, but it tells you if there's an obstacle. Well, I need to meet with the blah, blah, blah committee. Now you know you haven't presented to the decision maker. I need to know what our budget is for next year. I need to wait for the next round of venture capital, which should be happening in September, and you're in June. So you have a better idea of when you can close the sale, when it might become a reality, or there might be a block, something you can handle in between. There may have been a question that you didn't answer that you could answer. So the best thing to do is always have a pipeline. As I said, even if you're busy, keep prospecting and make the sale. Back to you, Dick.
Yep, here I come. So, thanks, Beverly. That was great. As I ended my previous conversation with you, we talked a lot about goal setting and accountability. you're able to track your progress to your goals. So let's talk a little bit more about that for a few minutes. What is your goal? Well, your goal could be lots of different things, and all of them are good. None of them are bad. Your goal, maybe you want to increase your income. Next year you want to earn $100,000. Maybe you want to grow your sales by 15%. Maybe you want to add 20 clients next year. Those are all legitimate goals, and you decide which one is important and relevant to you. But then you want to talk about what I call a recipe for success. How are you going to get that goal? And basically, basically we want to set up a format that determines how many calls or meetings or proposals that you need to make in order to reach that goal. Because those are the activities that come before actually having the sale. And in order to get those calls or meetings or those proposals, what are the behaviors that you need to do to connect with and find more prospects? The behaviors in your case, they may be cold calls like Beverly talked about. Maybe they're going to networking events and meeting folks there, or sending out targeted mail, direct mail, or maybe sending out email campaigns, or responding to inbound inquiries. Whatever are the activities, the behaviors that you do in order to attract proposals, and get new proposals, get calls, get meetings, etc. So let's be more specific and talk about a specific recipe for success. And in order to make the math easier, let's say our goal is we want to add 12 new clients next year. That's a SMART goal. Okay, SMART. Remember, it's and so that's our goal. So if we want to add get 12 new clients next year, on average, that means we want to get one new client every month. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, we know just from our past experience that if we meet with 4 new prospects, one of those prospects is going to turn into a new client. That's just back from our past experience. And if you don't have that experience, then make an assumption. You got to start somewhere. So we're assuming if we meet with 4 new prospects, one of those is going to turn into a client. And so therefore, we have to have one prospect meeting every week to get that one new client every month. And we also know, just again from past experience, that if we have make 25 one-on-one connections, that could be a one-on-one Zoom meeting, or a good networking conversation, or someone who picks up the phone on a cold call or an inbound inquiry, and you have a good conversation with them. I call that a one-on-one connection. If we have 25 of those, you know that you get one meeting. So that's it. That's what you need to be doing. Those are the activities that you need to be making, because if you make those 25 connections every week, you're going to get that one meeting that week. And one of those weekly meetings is going to turn into a new client. So we've boiled down your goal of 12 new clients into your specific activities, which is making 25 connections, however you are comfortable doing them, every week, and you should be reaching your goal. That's your recipe for success. And what's important is to be able to hold yourself accountable. And many people have no trouble doing that. Some people need some help. And that's why folks like Beverly and I are around. We're happy to become your score counselor if you want to work with us. We'll hold you accountable, believe it or believe you me. It's what we do with all of our clients. So I hope this has been helpful. If you're interested in getting a score counselor, you can put that information in the chat, and Teresa will help you there. If there are any questions, Teresa, any questions that need to be answered?
Yeah, we do have some questions. How do you get a follow-up or lead if, let's say, you're selling a product at a farmer's market, for example?
Well, all right, Beverly, go on.
Oh, you're muted,
Beverly, you're muted. Unmute yourself, Bev.
What you can do is, well, first of all, It depends what type of product you have, because if you're selling, let's say, a food product, the label should definitely have a QR code or a way for them to get additional product from you. One of the things you want to do is point that out to people as they are buying. I know that sounds kind of silly. You'd notice, but you'd say, if you love this, we'll be back here next week, but also you can order through here. Also to have a QR code on your table, also something to hand out to people. You can also have, people asked about a mailing list in another question. You can also say, do you want to put your name on our email list? Because we have special offers, new products coming out, where we're going to be at another farmer's market. So you want to do anything you can to try and get that information. So you want to definitely, and again, the phone thing, where you can easily exchange contact information. But there are definite ways. If it's fruits and vegetables, it may be a little bit difficult unless you have a farm, and then you can kind of put them to the farm stand. But for a lot of things, including jewelry, people can go to your website and just have cards to hand out.
This also underscores the importance of having using a CRM, a customer relationship management tool, because you want to make sure that those folks go into that database so that you can reach out to them, so that you can create an email marketing campaign, and direct that special sale to the folks who you've met. So having a CRM that keeps track of all your prospects, your clients, you can divide up by their interest, et cetera, is really important.
Okay, well, I think that wraps it up for today. Thank you, Beverly and Dick. That was a great amount of wonderful information. And thank you all for joining us. And we hope to see you very soon on our next webinar. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, folks.